fictional, not real place that is Fresno, Nevada, which conspicuously looks a lot like a park. It's your boy, the OG. I'm coming to you live from Site B on another lovely Monday morning here. Spring has trying to creep its way in. Which direction do we want to go today, guys? Okay, so it's March, and as I have March for Lord knows since I started doing this, we're gonna do Mega Dungeon March. Some people love Mega Dungeons. Some people are like, eh. Some people can't stand it. They think they're stupid. They emphasize the goofiness of the hobby. That this place that makes no sense, right? Nobody would build this. It's dumb. I love Mega Dungeons if they're creative and well done. I've been through some really amazing Mega Dungeons. I've been some fun. It was fun, whatever. And then I've been through a couple awful Mega Dungeons. But what is a Mega Dungeon? Now, when you hear that term, the first thing you just think is it's just an extra large dungeon, right? It's a dungeon, but instead of having 4 levels, it's got 400 levels. And yeah, size definitely. Sorry, there's no wrong way to say this. A right way to say this. Size definitely plays a part in a Mega Dungeon, but there's also some dungeons that are significantly huge, have 10, 30, 40, hundreds of rooms. So what's the difference? What's the difference just being a big dungeon and a Mega Dungeon? Is it just that the Mega Dungeon is bigger? Well, yeah, they tend to be bigger. But I think more importantly is dungeons tend to be static. And we've discussed this a lot, especially over the last 2 years, when I finally figured out how to put it into words. Dungeons have 1 or 2 stories to tell. They have one job. And once that job is done, once you've told the story that the dungeon has to tell, the dungeon's really got nothing else to say, right? I mean, what happens to the dungeon after the players leave? You've killed the Pumpkin King, you've rescued the princess, you've stopped the kobolds, and now you're ready to move on to the next set of adventures. You know, G1, we fight hill giants. G2, we fight the next larger giants. G3, we fight even bigger giants. G4, now we're fighting huge giants. What happened to the first place? You know, we never know. It doesn't matter. Maybe the villagers moved in and turned it into a amusement park. We don't know, right? We don't know. Tomb of Horrors, well, I mean, it's done. You've gone through it. White Plume Mountain, it's not like you're going back, right? Dungeons tend to be static. They have a beginning, middle, twist, end, and then that's it. Mega Dungeons tend to be fluid. Hi. Look, all my fans or my bots. Doesn't matter if you're a bot, I appreciate you. A Mega Dungeon tends to be fluid. Not only just that it has multiple ways you can go in, multiple ways you can go out, multiple reasons to keep going back. You could run a Mega Dungeon for years if it's interesting enough to the players to keep returning. And while a dungeon might have one story to tell, a Mega Dungeon often has multiple stories to tell, and the stories are always fluid, and there's that illusion of space. In a dungeon, you try not to have wasted space. In a Mega Dungeon, there will be wasted space. There will be empty hallways. There will be rooms that are there for no reason. There'll be things that, why is that there? It makes no sense. I don't know. It's just there. Why is there a boat? I don't know, because there's a boat. Mega Dungeons also give you license to be silly, especially the deeper you go. You know, the farther you get from the entrance, the weirder things tend to get. You know, you might not question going down a corridor in a Mega Dungeon and, like I just said, running into a boat. Why is there a boat there? Where did it come from? Doesn't matter. Mega Dungeon sort of gives you the open door to add a little goofiness. Another thing that's important in Mega Dungeons as opposed to normal dungeons is the fluidity, you know. While dungeons have wandering monster tables, you never really think about would the wandering monsters move into room G1 once I've killed the inhabitants in G1? Well, now the wandering monsters have a place. So if I leave the dungeon and come back, will the monsters now have claimed the empty room? Well, they might not. Again, it's limited space, it's a limited story. In a mega dungeon, those empty rooms are available property. Wandering monsters could move in, and that could spontaneously start a new story. Another thing that's important in mega dungeons is factions. Looks like the hawks are trying to steal eggs from the ravens, and the crows are not upset. I don't think my camera's doing it justice. We've got the two nesting hawks, and they're fighting with a raven, a crow. And usually it's because the nesting hawks go after their babies or after their eggs. And crows are very defensive of their nests. Or they could be playing, I don't know. Probably first one though. So, another thing that you might run into in a mega dungeon, hello, thank you for $1.99. Maybe I'll actually see that. Again, I don't know how super chats work. Mega dungeons have factions. That's a big thing. That's a big thing you're going to hear a lot about when we talk about mega dungeons and when you go through the good mega dungeons. That one. We've ever done that. Have we done that street before? I don't think we have. Right. So what's a faction? Is a faction a bunch of guys? Well, basically a faction is, all those wandering monsters? Well, they came from somewhere. And they probably work for somebody, or they have a goal. A faction could be one dude. The dragon could be a faction. And then another faction could be all the undead and who they work for and what they want. And then another faction could be the not undead, the humanoid monsters. Probably not going to have a green slime faction, but you might have a faction of kobolds that are using the slime to do whatever. Basically, it's a group or a very powerful individual who are doing their things in the mega dungeon. It would be no different than a political group or a faction in the real world doing things on the street. Maybe all these houses and their neighbors are one faction, and they all want one thing. And then over here we have the other neighbors, and they're a different faction, and they want a different thing. And sometimes those two people can work together, and sometimes they are directly opposite of each other. And as the player characters going through the mega dungeon, you will have encounters with the faction. And it comes to the old fistful of dollars. Do you help faction A? Do you help faction B? Do you ignore both the factions? Do you play them against each other? It has this whole level of politics and storytelling to make the mega dungeon feel alive. A mega dungeon should feel alive. It's not about the size. It's about the fluidity. It's about the fact that the mega dungeon has lots of stories to tell. And finally, while a dungeon tends to have a continuous theme, haunted cave is haunted cave is haunted cave, mega dungeons are all over the place. You can have one level that's one thing, and then another level that's a completely different thing. And a lot of the mega dungeons follow that principle because they think that's how mega dungeons in the past got built, But really, it's a much slower transition than some of the modern mega dungeons would make it. Now, mega dungeons could have one thing, like the bone gardens. It's all different types of undead. It's a whole necropolis, and it's a whole different regions. I don't think we've done this street before. Oh, dimensional vortex. Dimensional vortex. All right. Got some nice Gordons going on. All right. So, yeah. So there's a level of nonsense. And, to follow up on our talk about the mystical Underdark, the deeper you get into the mega dungeon, the farther you get away from the surface, the weirder things might get. just cause. Now, I think, but if you just look at the mega dungeons, especially some of the more well-known ones, nobody sets out to build a mega dungeon. It's usually you set out to build one thing and then stuff happens. And then you have to either incorporate that stuff or build around that stuff, or maybe you die before it's ever finished and somebody takes over and does something else. I don't know, you know. You look at Undermountain, you look at Castle Greyhawk, you look at some of the more famous ones. There's the beginning tends to be one thing, and the farther you get away from the beginning, it tends to get slightly weirder, and then you get even farther, and it gets even more weirder, and then you get really down towards the later levels, and it's just whatever the DM thought of. Why is there a boat here? Don't know. Does it matter? No, not really. It's a mega dungeon. We will forgive if there is a boat, and we never know why. Because the mega dungeon never ends. It's always got a new story to tell. Now that seems like a lot of work, right? I mean, these things are huge. Lots of levels, lots of politics, lots of machinations, lots of constantly stories you got to think about, lots of random tables. Do you maintain the theme? Do you switch up the theme? How do the themes interact? How do the themes work together, work against each other, how the factions operate, all that stuff. I'm exhausted just saying it. Imagine trying to run that. Imagine trying to justify who built this nonsense and why, and how come the nonsense doesn't ever seem to affect the real world. I could never get my cactuses to bloom like that. Hi, B. Thank you for the money, guys. Again, this is a nicely curtailed lawn. So, the secret to a mega dungeon is you're not running a mega dungeon. You're running lots of little dungeons that just happen to be connected. Greg Gillespie and his mega dungeons are a perfect example. If you look at, Bone Garden and all the other ones he's made, he's got a bunch of baby dungeons, usually. And those usually either interconnect with a larger dungeon, or the whole story is just these baby dungeons, and that's the mega dungeon. The mega dungeon is just all these little dungeons. Each little dungeon has its own little story. It might be one level, it might be one room. It might be four rooms, it might be 20 rooms, it might be 110 rooms, but they're all separate adventures and yet all part of the mega dungeon. The big difference, again, between a normal dungeon and a mega dungeon is fluidity. It's the factions, it's the personality. It's that a mega dungeon has lots of stuff going on. And that stuff goes on whether you're there or not. The mega dungeon doesn't care about you. You are not part of its story. And the mega dungeon doesn't care if you're there or not. Unlike a dungeon that is there to tell you a story. The mega dungeon is telling a story. And if you want to be part of that story, great, come on in. I'll play with you. But if you don't want to be part of that story, that's fine. You don't want to go over there and see what's going on in rooms K through 1 through 30? That's fine. What's ever going on in there is still going to happen. Well, you don't have to go over there. You can leave for a couple of months because, you need a thing and come back. I'll still be here. Some things might be same. Some things might be different. Doesn't matter. I'm still here. I'm still telling my story. I'm still playing. I've got all these factions and politics going on. You don't have to be a part of it if you don't want to. You can come and go as you please. I'm a mega dungeon. I don't really care. You're not gonna end my story, even if you go through every room and kill every monster, which would take years. I got more monsters, and I got more stories to tell. So and the other thing is, of course, is the mega dungeon wasn't built on purpose. It just sort of happened, right? You're building your castle, and as you're mining out your castle, you find some caves, and you explore those caves, and they lead into some dwarven ruins, and then those dwarven ruins leads, and blah 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 blah. So it just sort of grew. But you don't run that as one continuous thing, because that would be exhausting. You parcel it out. It's a lot of baby dungeons that are interconnected to become one large dungeon. And that's how you would run a mega dungeon. Really, the big thing of mega versus normal, it's not about the size. The bigger the better. It's about the weirdness. A mega dungeon gives you more permission to be weird, especially the farther they get away from the entrance. It's the factions, it's the interactions of the multiple stories it's going to tell. And top of the list, again, a mega dungeon is fluid. A dungeon is static. A dungeon has a beginning, middle, twist, and it's done. You don't ever have to go back. It's got nothing else to do. It's done its job. A mega dungeon never stops. It's fluid. There's always something going on. It's always got another story to tell. It's been here forever, and it's just chugging along. At this point in the conversation, people will go, yeah, well, there's nothing like that in the real world. What's a real world example of a mega dungeon? Some people will say malls. Malls are a real world example of mega dungeons. They're big. There's a lot of stuff going on. They evolve, they change. Even if people leave, the mall's still there. And eventually somebody will do something else with the mall, maybe, or it'll just sit there. And yeah, a mall, I think a mall's closer to a dungeon. What the hell is that? Talking about D&D tree. I think that's a bumbo tree or whatever. This is the largest trees in California. Jeez, look at this thing. He's huge. Now imagine all that filled with levels. That'd be a mega dungeon. So what are some real world examples of a mega dungeon? If you live in California, UCLA. UCLA is probably the closest thing we have here, at least in my part of California, to a mega dungeon. If you live on the other side of the state, of the country, the Pentagon. A lot of people said the Pentagon is, this huge spiraling structure, or the Smithsonian, because the Smithsonian is way bigger than most people realize. I use UCLA because I've actually been there. Very few people know that UCLA actually starts in the San Fernando Valley, because the first UCLA was in the San Fernando Valley, then stretches from the San Fernando Valley to Santa Monica, where it currently lives, and then stretches underneath Santa Monica. There's multiple levels of infrastructure underneath the surface of UCLA, especially the hospital, that would make it a mega dungeon. The Smithsonian is a mega dungeon because in addition to all the buildings we see, there's buildings we don't see. There's a whole bunch of stuff underneath that nobody ever sees or very few people get to see. All the buildings are large. They're vaguely connected. They sort of tell a story, but they are also their little thing. The Pentagon has also been said because it's huge. And once you get past like the first level, the level that everybody sees in the pictures, it starts to make less sense because, it was a structure made by the military. And as you get deeper, it kind of gets weirder and weirder. And, there's the top secret stuff and the interconnected tunnels and parts of the Pentagon nobody has ever seen. And just, yeah. So here in Southern California, at least in my part of Southern California, UCLA is a mega dungeon. Between where it starts and then everything on the surface and then everything underneath the surface. If you live on the other side of the world, you could say the Smithsonian is a mega dungeon. You could say the Pentagon is a mega dungeon. If you live in Europe, you could say the catacombs underneath France, the necropolis underneath France are a mega dungeon. The multiple tunnels of the London Rail, and including all the tunnels that got lost, and all the tunnels that connect to the Roman tunnels, and the tunnels that got forgotten during World War II, and the abandoned tunnels. They're still finding stuff when they go down there to add a new branch or fix something. Like once every couple of years, they stumble across another Roman ruin or another aqueduct or another previously, tunnel that people forgot about. So that's a very good example. If you live in England, the London Underground is a mega dungeon. So there are real examples of mega dungeons out there in the real world, and they all share the same thing. They all just sort of happened by accident. It started out being one thing, but then stuff happened, and you had to adapt. We had to change. We had to try something different. It had to grow and become something else. What the Pentagon started out to be and what the Pentagon is today, completely different, right? UCLA started out to be one thing. You look at UCLA today, it's completely different. And they're still going at it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in between. And that's important to think about, because you could just do a whole year-long campaign over one building in UCLA, one part of the mega dungeon, and then continue to explore it, because the mega dungeon has lots of stories to tell. My dungeon, it's only got one story to tell, and once that story's over, it's done. So yes, there we go. There's my 20-minute exploration of a very bad 20-minute explanation of what I think a mega dungeon is. It's just a lot of baby dungeons that are connected together. Maybe they have a story that sort of links them all together. Maybe they don't. As long as the mega dungeon is always evolving, always changing, it's never static. Empty rooms could suddenly become full rooms. It has a continuing story. What happened to the adventurers that went before your adventures? What happened after they leave and another group of adventurers comes on? What happened if the Lich succeeds? What happened when they killed the Orc King? It's got hundreds of stories to tell, and it never really ends. So if you want to build a mega dungeon, don't look at it as like, oh my god, I'm going to need 10,000 pages of paper and giant hex crawls and stuff, and it's going to take me years. Don't look at it like, okay, what I'm going to do is I've got a bunch of things that sort of tell the same story, and I'm sort of going to mash them together. But, I'm just starting it. Chances are they're only going to explore the first level, maybe the second. So I don't really need to worry about level 15. I just know it's there, but it's slowly going to evolve, because it's just, it's kind of just like a lot of little adventures that are all connected around one place, and that place is constantly growing, changing, and evolving. But there you go. Mega Dungeon March, day 1. If you want to hear more of this nonsense, let me know. If you want to tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about, please do. If there's something else you'd rather have me talk about. Also, don't forget, it's also Mega Power Munch, where we embrace superhero role-playing in all its many forms, especially since I just released a brand new superhero role-playing game. That's right, Vigilantes for Shadow Dark 2 is live on drive-thru, only $10 for the month of March. 141 pages of Shadow Dark superhero pulp action, street level love, wretched kung fu, gun wielding, definitely worth $10. So please support the OGGM by liking, sharing, subscribing, using the super chat. Thank you for the $1.99. Check out my Ko-Fi. You can always donate through there. Buy my merch on drive-thru, and generally, of course, the main thing I ask for you is have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.